People, places, things. That's what I focused on. People, places, things. When I got sober, I changed the people, places, things in my life. So I took my phone, I deleted every contact in it. All the people in my life were gone. I said the people that need me will contact me, but I don't need to be tempted to contact people that I don't want to be hanging out with. I changed the places in my life. I moved location because I was not living in a place that was safe for me. I moved uptown Manhattan and I moved 5 miles away so that I could be in a new place. And I changed the things that I was doing. So I changed my people, places, things. And through that, my life started to change. You cannot change your life until you change those things.
Hello, my friend, and welcome to Something for Everybody. My name is Aaron Machbitz. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. First and most important question is, how are you doing? Like, actually, for real, how are you doing?
Did you ask that? I do the same thing to people when I try to ask people, are you happy? How do you really feel? Because people will always say, yeah, whatever. How do I really feel? Man, I feel fantastic. I'm at the point in life where I try to be grateful for little things and just be healthy. And today I'm healthy. My mind is great, so I feel great.
Amazing.
How about you, Aaron? How are you? How are you really doing?
I've never had it so good, Justin. I've never had it so good.
I don't think I'm doing as good as you because I might have had better days, but today's not the best day of my life. But no, I think every day is a great day. If you don't think so, try missing one. That's what they say, right?
Yeah. Things are just there. They seem to be headed in the right direction. I'm getting married in September, which has been an incredible deal, which actually leads me to my first question, which is a very self-indulgent question, because you're a husband and a father. And again, I'm recently going to be married and soon I'll be a father, God willing. What have you learned from being a husband and being a father that maybe you can share specifically with me or, anyone watching or listening?
That's a great question. I'm going to answer it this way first to say that I'm 11 years sober. 12 years ago, I didn't think I would ever be a husband or a dad. I didn't think I thought I would always cheat on women, not because I'm a cheater, but because I was so insecure and I needed such self-esteem and I was so emotionally not available that I went from women to women. So the fact is that I've been with my wife for 10 years. I've never cheated on her. And I didn't know if I could be a dad, and I'm a great dad. I think this goes to show you that the human being is capable of way more than we think. And the fact that my mind was open at some point to say, Justin, maybe you want to be a family man. Maybe this is what you really want. And when I dove into it, I realized it was something not only that I really wanted, but it was the blessing that made me happy. And it made me not seek some of the other things that were really self-destructive for my life. So as far as advice for being a dad, for me, I had to wait till I was a little bit later in life. If I was, my mother had me when she was 16, and my father died when I was 4. So my mother was a widow at 20. Now, there's a point to this. I had a lot of resentment to my mom for a long time. But then I was able to forgive her later in life because I realized my mother had me so young, and I realized, well, Justin, what type of father would you have been at 22, 23, 24? I'd have been really bad. I would have been really, really bad. I went to jail for the last time when I was 29, I think. So I didn't get my act together until like my mid-30s. So the long answer there is, I think we have to be ready for fatherhood. And if people out there have their wild roots and seeds, get those out before you bring kids into the world. Because I don't miss a baseball game. I don't miss a dance recital. I don't miss anything. It's the most important thing to give my kids a great childhood. And I can really say that you asked me if I was happy in the beginning. I'm happy because a lot of that are the choices that I make day to day. The other people that are involved in my life that I know that I'm putting them, just as much as important as my own life is their life.
Yeah. Wow. Like you're probably never actually ready to be a father, but I think there's a ton of stuff that you can do ahead of time, like you said, to make sure that responsibility that you can carry. And I think that that's really important, because I was just like you know, is sort of in my 20s, like, just out there running around doing different sorts of things. I was a professional wrestler, so I traveled a lot, and like, in that sort of culture, we go a lot to strip clubs and hang out in those sorts of areas and do sorts of those things. And I never saw myself as a guy who would settle down and want to be a father. I was always like, that's something my sister will do. She'll have a big family. It's not something I need to worry about. Now tables turn. I'm 31 years old, and I feel a totally different way, just like you. And I think that's a beautiful thing, to allow ourselves to evolve. And now I feel that it's going to be an honor and a responsibility to do that. And I feel the same way, like when I coach my baseball players, and it's going to be even more when it's my own child. Like, wow, what an amazing gift. So, thanks for sharing that, Justin.
Yeah. And I want to speak on the evolution of life. Like, a lot of times people might look back and beat themselves up because in their 20s, they had an addiction, or they got arrested, or they cheated, or, whatever it is. I would never change anything, because I love that in my life. I'll speak for me, is I've experienced everything. So when I die, or when I pass away, I can look back and say, I did many peaks and valleys. At some point, I decided to stay at the top of the mountain and not go back into the trench anymore, because that's wisdom. But for me, okay, I'll put it this way. I will never have a midlife crisis, because I've done it all. Yeah. I've been drunk a million times. I've hooked up with enough girls. I've gotten fights. I've traveled. I've done everything that I don't need to get that red Corvette. And I think that's a really, really important thing to say, that when you become a father, or you just become emotionally mature, that you become more present with people. You can listen more, because your ego is not driving every little thing, because I've already done it all. And so I'm happy for the mistakes that I've made. I don't want to make a whole lot going forward, but I think our 20s and early 30s and teens and all that, like, I mean, it's like my kids now, sometimes my wife is like, what if the kids fall down and get hurt? Yeah, I want them to fall down and get hurt. Like that's part of it. I want them to get scraped up. I want them to get bruises. Once in a while, they're going to get stung by a bee. That's what childhood is all about. If we keep them inside and we protect them from everything, what are they going to learn? The same thing with life. We have to get out there and we have to see what this is all about. My whole thing for me is I didn't have a lot of guidance. Like my father died, like I said, my mom was young. I didn't have a lot of guidance. So I made a ton of mistakes. Now, what did that develop? It developed grit. So I have a lot of grit, but there were a lot of mistakes. But thankfully, if we're smart, we can learn from those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And thinking about your kids now that you guys are heavily on social media, and that's part of who you are and the culture that you've built, how do you create that boundary with your kids and social media and with yourself, of course?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. People ask that. I run our social like a real business. We have like 6 million followers on YouTube. So it's a real business. And since day one, we don't miss an upload, meaning I treat it like a machine. I treat it like a business. So let's say, for instance, I'm not one of these people that go around all day with my camera trying to film stuff. We film deliberately at, say, Sundays at 2. So the kids, they know Sundays at 2. You show up ready, prepared, you have ideas. Let's be done at 3:30 and let's go get something to eat. But during that time, my kids learn accountability. They learn how to participate. They boost their self-esteem because they're part of something. Because when I was growing up, Aaron, I grew up in North Georgia. And when I grew up, I had to build fences. I had to milk cows. I had to do all this yard work and everything. So I tell my kids, do you want to go outside and do these laborious chores, or do you want to make videos? Either way, you're going to contribute to this family, because it's a different era now. We live in a digital age, and they say, I want to make videos. That's a good answer, because I would want to do that too. So my kids contribute to our business, but we make a very, very specific point to be very deliberate about it, so that we're not filming all day, or we're not interrupting their childhood. Like right now, they got friends over, they go do things. So it's really important for people that are in social media, especially with kids. Don't let it dominate their childhood.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really important, because even if those kids that are not making whatever videos or making money from social media, like they're getting trapped in different pockets of the internet that are not guiding them in the right direction. Like you initially talked about, you didn't have any mentors or guidance growing up. Like I think specifically for young boys, there's not enough guidance or mentors leading them in the right direction, showing them how to use potentially their masculinity or their manhood in the right way. And I worry about that for young kids, because I see that play out in a sports setting. And so no question there, just maybe any thoughts you have on that.
Let me comment on that. I have a boy who's 6, and let me tell you, Aaron, in the past 6 months, I've taught him how to fish, how to ride a bike, how to swim. He reads 300-page books. These were all on my own volition because I want to teach my son. Now, if I didn't do that, he could be on his iPad all day and not learn a damn thing. And I get scared because I see these other kids, and they're around me and my son and my other kids, and I'm just like, this particular child over here is a product of just being on their iPad. They don't even know who they are. I think a lot of kids, they have really difficult times in their teenage years, early 20s. They don't know who they are. And they tell me this because they've been in their device, or they didn't have a strong parent, or maybe the parent was always in their device. They don't know who they are. So once again, my kids, by scraping their knee, by going outside and being bored, by doing all the things that a child needs to do for social interaction, they're figuring out who they are. And just like you, I very much worry about kids these days, and having kids on my own. Sometimes you can get stuck in like, Dad needs to work. I need to be at my computer. But even today, I stopped 3 times and I said, let me go interact with my kid. And that's very easy. It's like, let's go take a 20-minute walk. Let's go eat together. I had my son finish his book. Tell me what the rest of your book was about. And then there was half an hour. I said, what do you want to do for the next half an hour? You can't be on a computer, whatever. He's like, well, I'm bored. We'll just be bored. I don't care. Sit there and be bored. That is not a bad. Being bored is a luxury. There are many parts of the world that are trying to look for food and shelter. And the fact that you can be bored in a big house and there's toys, I don't have any sympathy for you. So going into that, like, and that could be another subject, is that we decided to homeschool our kids for some of these same reasons. What's going on in the schools, what they're being taught, what they're not being taught. We said we're going to bring it into the house and we're going to control the whole situation. So starting this year, we're homeschooling our kids.
Yeah. What was the biggest reason for that? Was there something that you were specifically worried about at school, or if you don't want to share it, please also let me know.
There's a few things, but I have this book, and it's called Daily Sober, and it's about sobriety and habits. There's another book I read called Daily Dad, which was the inspiration for this. Daily Dad is by Ryan Holiday, who wrote Daily Stoic. You probably know who he is. So I can talk about this later, but I was inspired to write Daily Sober for my sobriety, to help people through sobriety. But one day we're reading Daily Dad, and the lesson, I don't know what the lesson was about, but at the end of every lesson, I interact with my kids and I say, tell me what that lesson was about. And Ava, what was it about? Alexis, what was it about? Jersey, what was it about? And they tell me, how their understanding of that was. And all of a sudden, my daughter Alexis, at the end of the lesson, she broke out and she said, Dad, I don't want to die at school. And I said, well, what do you mean? Even though I knew what she meant, she's like, I don't want to be shot at school. And that was just pretty much in a moment, I was just like, I don't want my kids going to a place where they think they might get shot. That's just, I don't want that. So that was the first thing. And then it was the snowball of, can we homeschool? Do we have enough time? And do we have enough energy and resources? And then we just said, we'll figure out how to make it happen, because it's important.
Yeah. That's such a frightening thing for your child to have to say to you. And even for that to be something that we haven't really taken care of as a country yet. But that's probably a much larger conversation for another day, Justin. But back to your son, I think about masculinity a lot and how we want to develop a very healthy version of masculinity. How do you think about that in terms of raising your son? What sort of traits would you like him possess in terms of expressing a healthy version of his masculinity?
I think the best thing for a young child is I don't try to talk to them as much as I try to show through action or their actions. So I think children, with my kids, I tend to say one thing to them and then let them react to that. So I don't preach to them. I don't try to teach them lessons. The point is, yesterday, I said, Jersey, he's 6. I said, you're going to start taking out the trash. And yesterday, which means Jersey, you're going to start taking out the trash, meaning I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to show you how to do this. So yesterday, because he's only 6 years old, he had a tough time pulling the trash can, right? He had a tough time getting the trash bags into the trash can. And I didn't help him at all. And he almost started to cry. And I said, you're going to have to figure this out. How are you going to get the bag into the trash can? And he finally did. And then he got the next one and he figured out he could step on a little stool and put it in. And then he figured out how to get it on the driveway without the trash can knocking him over. And then at the end, I could see that he felt very proud of himself. That is masculinity.
Mm.
It's more important. What if I were to say, this is how you do it. This is how you do it. Now let Big Bad Dad show you how to do it. I said, no. When he couldn't get the trash bag in there, I said, how are you going to get that in? I know how to get it in. I didn't tell him that. I said, how are you going to get it in? I'm not strong enough. Yeah, I think you're strong enough. You can do it. There's different ways. You can pick it up this way. You can try to throw it up that way. You can get a stool. You got to figure it out. When he did it, I could see that he felt very proud of himself. Now, let me give you another example. Last week, we were in Cancun on vacation. We're playing basketball. And once again, my son is 6. And we're shooting on a 10-foot high goal. And he doesn't shoot on a 10-foot high goal because he's 6 years old. So it took him about a minute to make a shot. He just kept shooting. It took him a minute. And he made one. And he said, Dada, how many do I have to make? I said, 25. 25. Like he was just like out of his head, 25. I said, why do you think I'm saying you can do 25? He said, because you believe I can do it. I said, yeah. And I'm going to be here with you until you do it. And you're going to do it. It took him about an hour. And then when he made the 25th shot, you know what I said? I said, one more. Because always exceed and be better than what was expected of you.
Mm-hmm.
He made the 26th shot. And once again, he felt so proud of himself. That, to me, is masculinity. Without preaching, that's him doing it because he did that himself.
Yeah. You're building his self-image, which is beautiful, man. It makes me think about my own parents, and I feel like I say this all the time, but I feel like I won the lottery with my parents, and it's such a blessing to hear you do that for your kids. Like it's amazing because why
do you say the lottery? Did your parents do similar things, and they made a healthy self-image and masculinity?
Yeah, I mean, they're still, both of them are still around. They're still married. They're still extremely supportive and loving and kind. And I've made some very weird career choices in my life, and they've never once not supported it or not said, yeah, you can fucking do it, go for it. Like we have your back, and it's just like, it's incredible. So I've never felt like anything I do, I'm on an island. They're always like, hey, if you're going to go do this thing, you got to do it full out. And if you really, really need our help, we'll be there. But we want to see how well you can do it on your own and take those steps and leaps and strides and fall down and get back up, just like you're talking about. And so there could be no better support system than that for me. And my mom is the only person who's listened to every single episode of this podcast. And now we're at like almost 300 episodes. So that's also pretty cool. But it's an amazing thing.
Let me shout out your mom. Hi, Mom, because that's an amazing thing. If she listens to every one of your podcasts, that means you have an awesome support system right there. What I tell people is that my family loves me so much and I love them so much. I don't need much more than that. So what I'm saying is that if I had a mom like yours, I don't know if I would have sought addiction and the bottle and other things that I thought gave me joy. It's very ephemeral. It wasn't real joy. But the fact is I didn't have people to love me. So I did stand-up comedy. I did many other things to try to win people over in their affection because I didn't have it in my real life. Now that I have it in my real life, it's the most amazing thing. And like you have it with your mom, you only need a few people in life to really get you through. You don't need a whole lot. I've got my 3 kids and my wife, and I know other people, but to love and be loved very tightly is an amazing thing to have in life.
Yeah, it's incredible. Speaking about your sobriety, what was your life like before you got sober? What was going on there?
Well, I was a stand-up comedian for about 10 years. I made my living at it, about half of that. So I performed at all the clubs across the country, bars, anywhere you could think of. But really it just kind of fueled my addiction. When I got sober, I realized I didn't really like stand-up comedy that much. I loved that people laughed at me. My self-esteem needed it. My ego needed it. I was kind of a person who just needed validation because I didn't think I was worth much. Because I realized in my childhood through therapy, I thought that people didn't love me because my dad died and my mom wasn't around. I thought I wasn't worthy of love, but really it wasn't my fault. I was a kid. It wasn't my fault. I didn't understand this, but psychologically, it really affected me. So before sobriety, I was doing stand-up, and then, it was kind of good until it wasn't good. There was just one day that I was fed up with myself. I saw myself for who I really was. For the longest time, I thought, I'm just a crazy guy. Like, I'm that crazy guy that people have around that tell stories. And like, everyone's got to have a crazy guy around. Justin, you don't have an addiction. You're just a crazy guy. But then I think you'll appreciate this, Aaron, is that one night I turned on a 30 for 30. I just got done with a date. Now on this date, all week, I told myself, if this girl will like me, then I'll be happy. If I can just win her over, will I be happy? And that was a trend in my life because I couldn't be happy on my own. If this girl could make me happy or that girl, so I'd go from relationship to relationship. So I went out with this girl and she liked me. But I walked home. I was living in New York City, but I walked home through the streets of New York and I was miserable. And I said, why am I so miserable if what I wanted I just got and now I'm miserable? So I go home. I turn on late at night, 30 for 30, Chris Herron, the Chris Herron story. It's a 30 for 30. It's great. Chris Herron is an NBA basketball player who wasted his NBA career through drugs and alcohol. That's the story. But by the end of the story, Chris Herron gets sober and he becomes a hero in his community. Mm-hmm. But there's one part in the movie where he's sober and he goes back to a 7-Eleven and he goes to the 7-Eleven and he says, right here is where I passed out while my wife and my kid were waiting for me at the airport. And I looked at the TV and I said, that's pathetic. And then I said, oh, wait, that's you. Justin, that's you. Because a week before that, I passed out drunk and I couldn't get on an airplane. So I missed an opportunity because I was drunk. And so in that moment, I just realized who I was. I'm not a crazy guy. Like, Justin, you got 3 DUIs. You've been arrested 6 times. You've gone to rehab 2 times. You are a person with a problem. So in that moment, I think I realized who I really was, and I wanted to change that person. I didn't want to be that guy anymore. And so I decided the next day, just don't drink. I kept it simple. Just don't drink tomorrow. I don't care if I punch a horse in the face, if I get in a fight, I don't care. Like, just don't drink. And I think that's important, Aaron, because a lot of people try to make a big change and they want to lose weight. I'm waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm just going to eat vegetables. I'm going to fast. I'm going to do all these things. It's like, it's too complicated. I said, tomorrow I'm not going to drink. And I haven't drank in 11 years. And since then, in 11 years, I've gone on a different journey of therapy to get better in my mind. I started volunteering a lot to learn empathy. And then at some point, I met my wife and I built a family. And I guess the main point of that story is that I took my energy from here and I put it here. And that's kind of the main thing is I think a lot of people look at me now and they say, oh man, Justin McClure, man, his family is huge. And, he's got a partnership with Damon John from Shark Tank and like all these different things. And I like to let people know, no, I'm the same guy as 12 years ago. Now I make better choices. I didn't get smarter. None of that. It's the same person. And I think that inspires people because a lot of people think they don't have what it takes for success, but they do, because all I've found that you realize you need patience, discipline, and better choices. That's it. You need to make better choices, and you need to have discipline, and then allow patience to let the things happen in your life that need to happen.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting how life is a mirror sometimes? Like you watch this thing on 30 for 30 and it's exactly just showing back at you. But most of the time that happens over and over again until we finally repeat that, or finally we learn that lesson. So was there more instances like that maybe you...
At that point, people ask me at that point, because I already had 3 DUIs, I'd gone to rehab, like, Justin, why didn't you learn the lesson before then? Because I wasn't ready for it. That's why I tell people, you can't change somebody. I was completely by myself. When I watched that 30 for 30, I was lonely and I was alone, and I just got home from this date, and I saw in Chris Hare and myself, and I said, today is the day that it's enough.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very powerful what you start to say to yourself. When you use that phrase, just don't drink. Is there any other things you learned along the way to sort of beat your addiction that maybe other people can use in their own life?
Yeah. Let me. And by the way, like I don't. My whole thing is, I think my whole gift is like, I don't like to preach. I like to be in the trenches. I want to be in the trench with somebody to let them know I was there. So when I give my advice, it's what I fucking did. I did this shit, and it was hard. So when I say what I did is I did people, places, things. That's what I focused on. People, places, things. When I got sober, I changed the people, places, things in my life. So I took my phone. I deleted every contact in it. All the people in my life were gone. I said, the people that need me will contact me, but I don't need to be tempted to contact people that I don't want to be hanging out with. I changed the places in my life. I moved location because I was not living in a place that was safe for me. I moved uptown Manhattan, and I moved 5 miles away so that I could be in a new place. And I changed the things that I was doing. So I changed my people, places, things. And through that, my life started to change. You cannot change your life until you change those things. So that was one of the main things that I really did. And then 6 months into sobriety, I started going to therapy to kind of fix the problems up here. And that was probably the biggest thing, because you can't be, sobriety is not about abstaining from alcohol or drugs. It's about fixing the character defects up here. And when I got sober, I still, after 6 months, I had all the problems up here. So I went to therapy, and therapy really, really helped me. I went every Wednesday for a year, and it really helped me dive into the psychology of, like, why did I choose to abuse myself this way? And through that process, Aaron, I learned to love myself. And when I learned to love myself, the addiction had less power. And so the main thing that I tell people is people, places, things. But the reason I've stayed sober and changed my life is because my life in sobriety got bigger than the addiction. If your addiction is bigger than you are, you'll always go back to the addiction. But in sobriety, I built a great family, a great business. I'm healthy, all these great things. I look back at my addiction as a previous life. Whereas a lot of people relapse and they go back to their addiction because they haven't found something that they can put their life into or their passions into.
Yeah, finding that purpose that's a little bit bigger than you is a very powerful driver. Whether that be your job, whatever it is very powerful. It's something that definitely changed my life in the course of my life in a very similar way. As you, sort of in the same realm. But
you want to speak on that?
Sure. Yeah, more than happy to. Yeah, so
this is your podcast, but I know it's your podcast, but I'm curious about people. I know I'm the guest on your show, but I don't know your story, so I'd like to hear that if you don't mind.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and similar to you, I got into professional wrestling because I wanted attention. I didn't get as much attention from from my peers, specifically when I was like in high school. And then in college, I became sort of this like boisterous jock, egocentric maniac person. And I loved it. So then I became a professional wrestler because I wanted to be in crowds just like you. And I wanted people to give me their admiration.
Like a comedian, right?
Yep, 100%. It's very, very similar, which is interesting because I spoke about my parents and how loving and supportive they were. It's interesting that I went in sort of that domain, but I fell in love with wrestling when I was a young boy, and I wanted to be like The Rock and all these people. It was amazing. And so I followed that dream, and it was going quite well. And then in 2018, I lost my big sister, Rachel, to suicide. And sort of in that moment, everything drastically changed for me. For the first couple of years, I didn't really know how to handle it. And then COVID hit. So not only was I dealing with that grief, but I also lost my job because you can't wrestle in front of no people. So I was drinking very heavily, dating a lot of women at the same time. And then one day I was actually laying in bed with this woman that I was sleeping with. And we had just got done having sex. And she asked me, she didn't ask me. She told me, she said, "I know you didn't enjoy that. You weren't even here." And I was like, I wasn't, I did not, I don't even like, I wasn't even present. I didn't enjoy it. It felt like a waste of time. Like, so that moment, her looking at me and basically being a reflection of what I was thinking was like the switch that I needed. And then I went on a celibacy journey, a sobriety journey. And that's when I met my fiance, and now we're a couple years later and we're about to get married. So that's the very, very condensed version of my story, but similar to you and how I feel about this. And now, so really cool.
I love that you shared that. Sorry about your sister. That's really, really tough. And I'm so glad that I write a lot. So this is 365 daily lessons, and a lot of them deal with mental health. I remember in my deepest days of addiction, I remember writing a suicide note, and it wasn't that I was like sad. I was exhausted. And the note was basically like, "Hey guys, don't feel sorry for me. I've had a great life. I'm done trying and I'm exhausted." And so a lot of the things that I really have fought for in my life now is that I'm a big student of like Taoism and Eastern philosophies, and I believe that I'm going to live to be 88 or 98 or whatever it is. I have a lot of years left, and I want to be happy. I want to be happy. And so for me, I realized that addiction or alcohol, drugs, they cannot fit into a happy life. So unless I want to go back to being suicidal, I got to get rid of the things I know that cannot go along for the ride.
Yeah.
And just like your story, which I think is great, when I got sober, I told you sobriety is not about abstaining from alcohol. I also abstained from women, which is so hard for me because all I did was try to hook up. I was a womanizer. The hardest thing the first year, I said, no alcohol, no dating. No dating, no dating. That was tough. Mm-hmm. So, but I did it. And then guess what? A year and a half, and I've told this story before, it's great. But a year and a half into my sobriety, I get out of the subway. I look across the street. There's this beautiful Nigerian curvy woman, and two guys are chasing her down the street. "Hey, baby, hey, baby, hey, baby." I walk across the street. I walk across the street in front of this woman, and I said, "Hey, these guys behind you, like they're chasing you. Like, why don't you just pretend like you know me, walk with me, like they'll leave you alone. Just we'll walk around the corner, blah, blah, blah." That's what I did. And that woman became my wife.
Yeah.
But
what an amazing story.
The great story is that I did the right thing, and I was celibate, and I said, I have to not drink and not date and figure out who I am and get healthy. And when I did that, the right person showed up in my life. Instead of me out dating the town, I waited, and then the right person showed in my life, and then it was, and we've been together ever since.
Yeah. The exact same, well, I didn't meet my fiance on the street like you, but like the same sort of idea happened for me. I needed the space to like figure out what I wanted to actually do in my life, who I wanted to be, like what responsibilities I wanted to take on. And so that's why the not drinking and not, dating or seeing any women for that year that I did it was like allowed me to have the time, the room to meet someone who was actually someone I wanted to envision being with me or being together for the rest of our lives. And like, it's such a beautiful thing how it works out like that. But like one very interesting thing about alcohol when I stopped drinking was the way people look at you in the bar when you tell them that you're not drinking. Was some of the craziest looks that you ever get, because alcohol is like the only drug that if you don't do it, people just assume you have a problem. And like, I didn't have like, it was an issue, but like people just assume that you're like a crazy person or something's wrong with you if you're not drinking in the bar. And I think that's an issue because alcohol has just become such this like normal thing that people do. And it's like one of the most destructive drugs that we could do in the world. I understand why some young people do it because of the whatever fake confidence boost and all that sort of crap. But like, I think there needs to be a change of course about how we view alcohol specifically for young people and things like that.
Well, I try to be an example when I'm out, even from day one. If people ask if I didn't drink, you know what I would say, Aaron? They would say, "Why don't you drink?" I say, "Because I got 3 DUIs. I've been to jail 5-6 times. I've gotten a lot of fights. My first wife divorced me because of that. You want to talk any more about it, or is that good? Are we good now?" They were like, "Oh, damn, okay." Because I don't care what people think of me. And also people say, "You're not drinking." I'm like, "I got water. I am drinking.
Right.
How am I not drinking? Is this not a drink? This is a drink." And so I was also a big advocate in my sobriety from day one. And even now, like I would never have a mocktail or a fake drink. I mean, I proudly drink water and sweet tea. I'm not going to have a drink that looks like alcohol. Like, fuck alcohol. That's poison, man. I mean,
that's right.
Alcohol fermented into your body is worse than sugar. Your liver cannot process it. It is a poison that will end your life sooner than it should. So why should you ever drink it?
I agree. Yeah, I agree. That's great. Speaking about mental health, what sorts of things do you do currently or even encourage your kids to do to take care of their mental health or prioritize it or think about it?
Well, one thing I do when I really encourage my kids and they do it is I try to journal my thoughts when I really, really know that I feel anger towards my wife or even my kids. My daughters are 11, and when they get to be that age, they get to be a little bit back talky and they get smart aleck. And so sometimes you find yourself like having tough days. And so what I do is I journal. I journal every day, and sometimes I'll try to get out how I feel so I can get my feelings out on the paper so it doesn't go towards a human being. Because if I can get it out on paper, then I'm more rational and kinder with the same thought. It just doesn't come across in a bad way. Because one thing I have with my wife, one of the deals we try to make is that don't say things you don't want to say, because the words can really cut into people. So really think about what you say. And for me, one way to mitigate that is journaling, time to myself. So for me, because I feel like I'm a guy that goes from like 1 to 10 like that. I'm talking about like if I were to get upset, like I got in fights, because I would go from 1 to 10 like that. Like I just, something about the Irish in me or whatever it is, I don't know. So the same thing with my wife is that I don't want to snap at her. I don't want to say something I don't want to say. So sometimes I have to take that walk or I have to go do something on my own. And when I come back, I'm still mad, but I know how to say what I need to say without hurting somebody.
Yeah, that's beautiful and very powerful lesson for sort of anyone in a relationship to use. I journal a lot. It's one of my most important tools that I have specifically for that reason. So that's awesome. Anything else in your mental health toolkit? Yeah.
I mean, as simple as it is, and it's not overrated. Getting outside, man. Like getting outside. I'm not talking about getting vitamin D. I'm talking about like when I go run, and I'm gonna go run in a little bit. I don't take my phone. I don't take headphones. I just try to have my thoughts. And I have my kids come join me for the second part. But just getting outside, I always feel better after than I did before. And if we can do that in life more times than not, then that tells you the thing that you need to be doing. If you feel better after than you do before, then do that activity more. And for me, it's just taking the time to go outside.
Yeah. Are there any of the 365 lessons from Daily Sober that really, really stand out to you that are maybe the top two?
They're all great.
I
think they're all good. So it's 300. Let me go to today. I'll see what today is. Today is July 30th, right? Okay, Here we go. July 30th is I'm just plain bored. And this is about how people in sobriety may relapse because they're like, I'm bored. I went back to my vice because I'm bored. And this is me talking about how, once again, I mentioned it earlier that because it was on my mind because I did a video about it, about how boredom is a luxury and we have to learn how to cope with our feelings while being bored, because sometimes being bored is a great thing. Because Aaron, what I talk about, I think, is that when we lived in addiction or in the fast lane, or when you're a wrestler chasing all the women, you had highs and lows. Like it was like here and here. But when we're in the middle lane, it seems boring. But I want to be in the middle lane. Like I want my life to be boring. I want to be right here. I just want to be in the middle lane. I tell my wife that all the time. It's like my life is so much more boring than it used to be, and I love it.
Yes.
So, but to answer your question, so some of the lessons are focused more on me, my story. Some are science related, like this is what alcohol does to your kidneys. This is what alcohol does to your brain. Some of these have. I have a lot of spotlights on celebrities. Like here's Rob Lowe's story about sobriety, emotional triggers. So it's kind of all. This book was very difficult to write because instead of writing a whole book, I said, I want to break it up in 365 lessons, which is hard because I don't think people want to read a whole book. But if I can get people to read one page a day, then I think that's pretty powerful. It was kind of arrogant of me to say, I want to write a whole book and expect people to read that. I'm like, but if I can just write one good page, then maybe people will read that. So, and the other thing I want to say about this is that if you're fighting an addiction or anything, it's all about achievement. So for me, if nobody bought the book, I wrote it. I know the effort that I wrote. And every year, Aaron, I try to do a big task like this. If we can every year do something big with our life, man, we can fight off depression. We can fight off our mental instability. There's so many things we can do by just going out and achieving. So for me, when I get the bug that I kind of get depressed, I'm like, okay, I need to set a project and I need to go achieve that thing. That will get me out of it. So this is one of those things I said, you know what? I'm going to write a book. It's going to be hard, but I like doing hard things. Go do it.
Hell yeah. Love that. One of the lessons that stood out to me most from your book is don't compromise your values. And I think that's a really important lesson for anyone to learn. Talk to me a little bit about that one, where that came from.
Don't compromise your values. Which one was it? I want to know what I said there.
I don't know what page it was on. But I know, I think it's in there at least for,
No, it's definitely in there. I'm trying to, yeah. So don't compromise your values. It's going back to what I just said. My values in the bar means I don't drink, period. So if you come up to me and ask me why I don't drink, it might seem like I'm going to put you in your place because you're compromising my value. You're asking me why I don't do something. So what I'm saying, I don't compromise. I know what I stand for, and I don't equivocate on that. I'm not asking for more friends, none of that stuff. I know exactly where I'm at, and I will not compromise any of that. So, for instance, I write in the book, it might have been on that page about how, like, early on in my sobriety, the first couple of years, I didn't go to bars. If you had a birthday party, I would say, okay, well, why don't we meet early in the week and go to a coffee shop or something? I can't go to your birthday party at the bar because I don't belong there. So if you value my friendship, then you'll say, let's go take a walk or let's go to the coffee shop. So I think by not compromising our values, we're saying, I don't drink. I don't hang out with people I shouldn't hang out with. Anything outside of that, I will let you know that will not be compromised.
Yeah. I mean, it's wildly important because it allows us to say know much easier if we understand what our values actually are. If we're someone who lives through those first principles and those core values, then man, when an opportunity comes my way and it lines up with my core value of like consistency or resilience, I'm like, dude, yeah, me and Justin, let's go rock and roll. But if you bring me a business plan and it just doesn't line up, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. No, thanks, man. It just doesn't line up. And you're also someone who lives to your core values. You understand why I said no. You just brought it to me because you thought it might be in alignment. And I think that's like a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Yeah. And when somebody stands up for their values and they tell me no, I respect them so much because I'm like, this person is standing up for their principles. And I respect that. Now, deep in my addiction or other things, I didn't have values. I was there to manipulate others. I was there to express my desires. I didn't really have values. It wasn't until I got sober and in a couple years into it, I was like, well, Justin, who are you? What do you stand for? How can you keep achieving that? And how can you attract the people around you that are the same? And it's kind of like they say in AA, stick with the winners. Be around the people who have what you want. So I started hanging out with people who have what I want. Kind of like yourself. I was a college athlete. I've run mini marathons and all kind of different things. So in sobriety, I said, well, let's get back on that. Like do CrossFit again. Go find a boxing gym. All these different things that I was doing, and I was like, these are my people. These are my values.
Yeah, it's beautiful because it just makes life that much better. Like when people say you should know who you are, that doesn't have anything to do with your job or your occupation. It has everything to do with what characteristics and what values you stand for. And that obviously has relationship to like who you are as a father and what job you do, but it's mostly like what people say behind your back. Oh, Justin, like he's kind and resilient and hardworking. Like that's what I want people to say or behind my back or what I want them to say about me at my funeral. I don't care about people talk about that I was a professional wrestler. I care that people talk about that I lived through my first principles. And I think people can think about that when they're trying to figure out who they are, because that's such a big question. But if you distill it down to like, okay, what character traits do I want to live by? It makes it a little bit more tangible, like you're talking about small steps that you can move forward and actually handle. So I think that's important too.
I think it's also important to not try to be perfect, meaning with my wife, we fight sometimes, and I told her from day one, and I tell her today too, I'm stubborn, I can be a big baby, I'm defensive, and I hold grudges. I ain't trying to change that because you know what, Aaron? I work so much harder on my emotional maturity, being sober, loving, being open. I worked on the big things that I told her. I said, these small things, I'm going to be a baby sometimes. I'm going to hold grudges, blah, 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 blah. Because we can't be a perfect person.
Yeah.
So in that case, my values sometimes are just like, you got to allow people to be who they are. Like my wife and I, like sometimes we might fight 2 days out of the month. And some people say, some people might disagree with fighting, but when we fight, I say, is today one of the days? If today's one of the days, let's go. Let's just get it out. Let's just go. Because Aaron, if you fight 2 days out of 30, you have a great relationship. I mean, that keeps you in the majors. You're doing good. So I think there's too much focus on, I got to fix everything. It's kind of like going back to sobriety. I said, I'm just not going to drink today. I don't care if I have other bad traits. The same thing in relationships and friendships is that the right people will find us and they'll love us for who they are. I think my wife loves my idiosyncrasies, the things that I think are faults of mine. I think she embraces those. And she also appreciates that I work on the big things. If my wife tells me that she would like a little bit more affection, I don't give her affection more the next day, but I keep it in my mind and I gradually in my own time show her more affection. And I think that's what makes us great is that she didn't expect me to do it right away. I don't expect her to do it right away. But we both have that sense of like we understand our values and what we're trying to stand for, and we allow each other to be that.
Yeah. I mean, the realness is amazing because relationships are hard. They're hard. Like we're ever evolving, ever changing human beings, and we're trying to create a relationship with this person for the rest of our lives while also nurturing young people. And to be honest and real about the struggles just makes everything that much more beautiful, I think, at least coming from a viewer's point of view. about you and your wife and hearing that. So I think the realness is beautiful.
You said it right. Relationships are hard, but in this age where everyone's getting divorced, like my wife and I, we're so happy. And sometimes we look at it like, why are we happy? And I think a lot of it is we communicate well and we don't have any secrets. Meaning that my wife can look at my phone at any point. I can look at her phone. We put nothing above the family. The family is number one. So therefore, there's really nothing ever to fight about. She didn't have bad spending habits. I'm so simple. I wear the same clothes every day. I eat the same food. I'm a caveman. So there's really nothing to ever fight about. When I look at other couples that are falling apart, I'm always like, wonder what happened there. Then I find out what happened there. I'm like, wow, my wife and I, we exhibit none of that. No wonder they got divorced. So I'm also grateful that, I got married to my wife a little bit later in life when I was a little bit older, and my wife kind of went through what she went through. So I think we have to kind of go through our journeys and our struggles, and then we find the person that we need to be with, and we got to hope that we're mature enough to let it rock for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you, Justin. Do you have any last minute thoughts, comments, questions, concerns, anecdotes?
No. It's been a great story. I hope people can take something from this. And the whole thing with Daily Sober, the book. 12 years ago, I was not on a winning streak, and so I watched things and I read things that changed my life. So my voice on social media now and writing this book is trying to give back a couple feeds that maybe this is the thing that somebody needs that changes their life. And that's why I get the whole thing away for free. If you go to Instagram, Daily Sober, or the website, it's all for free. You don't have to buy the book because I really, really want to give away some of the stuff that I know that has really helped me. So hopefully, maybe something today, somebody got something that inspired them, and that makes me feel good.
Yeah, let's get on a freaking winning streak. I love that. All of Justin's information is linked below, so check that out. I'm sure you guys have seen his family on YouTube, but thank you, Justin. I appreciate you, man, and happy to know you, and yeah.
Likewise. Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate you having me.
Thank you very much for tuning into that episode. And if you enjoyed it, click right here for another full-length episode of the podcast. And please don't forget to subscribe. But most importantly, above all else, please take good care of yourselves and others. And I'll see you next time. Lots of love. Cheers.